When Staff Sergeant Maya Chen pulled into the parking lot of Mercy House Children's Shelter, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. In the back seat, 6-year-old Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit while 4-year-old Lucas slept against his car seat, both unaware their world was about to shatter. Maya had exactly 72 hours before deployments. 72 hours to find safety for the two people who meant everything to her, after their father had chosen addiction over family. She thought she'd prepared for every battlefield, but nothing had prepared her for this moment of walking her children to a door she prayed would protect them while she couldn't. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The intake paperwork felt heavier than her rifle ever had. Maya Chen stared at the clipboard in her lap, her pen hovering over the first line. Child's full name. Through the windshield of her Honda Civic, Mercy House Children's Shelter looked smaller than she'd imagined, converted Victorian house painted cheerful yellow, with flower boxes that someone had filled with winter pansies. It looked like the kind of place where children might be happy. She needed it to be the kind of place where children might be happy. Mama? Emma's voice drifted from the back seat, small and uncertain. Are we going to see Daddy? Maya's pen stilled. She turned to look at her 6-year-old daughter, whose dark hair had escaped its ponytail during the 2-hour drive from Fort Campbell. Emma's stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hoppers, sat in her lap, one ear more chewed than the other. No, baby. Remember what we talked about? Daddy is sick, and Mama has to go help some people far away for a little while. How little? 18 months. Maybe longer, depending on how things went in Syria. Maya had been through 3 deployments before, but never as a single mother. Never with the court order in her glove compartment that stripped David of all custody rights after his 3rd DUI, this one with the kids in the car. Just for a while, Maya said. Because what else could she say to a 6-year-old? Lucas stirred in his car seat, his 4-year-old face slack with sleep. He'd been quiet since the hearing, too quiet, like he understood more than he should. Children always understood more than they should. Maya looked back at the paperwork. Emergency contact. She'd left it blank. Her parents were gone. David's parents had made their position clear when they'd sided with their son despite everything. Her sister lived in a studio apartment in Seattle, barely managing her own life. There was no one. The passenger door opened, making her jump. A man slid into the seat beside her late 30s, wearing a faded flannel shirt and jeans with honest dirt on the knees. His dark hair was cut short, but not military short, and when he looked at her, his brown eyes held something she hadn't seen in a long time, genuine concern. Sorry, he said, his voice gentle. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Jake Morrison. I was dropping off some supplies and saw you sitting here for a while. Thought you might need someone to talk to. Maya's hand instinctively moved toward her hip, where her sidearm usually sat. But she was in civilian clothes now, just another parent in crisis. I'm fine. I'm sure you are. Jake's gaze moved to the children in the back seat, then to the paperwork in her lap. But being fine and needing help aren't mutually exclusive. There was something about his voice and no pity, not judgment. Just recognition, like he'd sat in this same parking lot once, holding the same impossible choice. You don't know anything about me, Maya said. I know you're military. He nodded toward the Fort Campbell parking pass hanging from her rearview mirror. I know you've been sitting here for 20 minutes, which means whatever you're about to do isn't easy. And I know those kids back there love you because they keep looking at you like you're their whole world. Maya felt her chest tighten. She looked in the rearview mirror and found Emma watching her with those wide, serious eyes that belonged on a much older child. I'm being deployed, she said, surprising herself with the admission. Tomorrow morning, there's no one else. Jake was quiet for a moment. In the silence, Maya could hear the distant sound of children playing in the shelter's backyard, laughter that sounded forced, like they were trying too hard to be happy. What's your MOS? Jake asked. Combat medic? Tough job. He paused. How long? 18 months. Maybe more. Jake nodded slowly. And their father? Maya's jaw tightened. Not in the picture. Won't be in the picture. She expected him to ask more questions, to probe the wound that was still bleeding. Instead, Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a small photographer little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. "This is Sophia," he said. "She's 7 now, lost her mom when she was 3. Maya studied the photo. The little girl had Jake's eyes, but her smile was pure sunshine. "I'm sorry. Cancer." Jake tucked the photo away carefully. "Took 18 months from diagnosis to after. 18 months of hospitals and hope and watching the strongest person I knew get smaller every day." The weight in Maya's chest shifted, recognizing grief in his voice. "That must have been impossible." "It was. But you know what was harder? The first 6 months after, when it was just me and Sophia, and I had no idea how to be both parents. When I thought I was failing her every single day." Through the windshield, Maya watched a social worker emerge from the shelter's front door. The woman looked around the parking lot, probably wondering which car held the new arrivals. "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. Jake followed her gaze to the social worker. "Because I remember what it felt like to think I had no other choice, and I remember what it felt like when someone offered me one." "You're offering me a choice?" "I'm offering to help." Jake's voice was steady, matter-of-fact. "I have a house with spare bedrooms. I have experience with scared kids who've lost too much, too young. And I have 18 months to make sure Emma and Lucas know they're safe while their mama comes home." Maya stared at him. "You don't know me. You don't know them. You could be a stranger offering to care for your children." "Yeah, I know how it sounds." Jake reached into his wallet again, this time pulling out a business card. "Jake Morrison, licensed clinical social worker. I work with foster families, have for 8 years. Before that, I was a teacher." Maya took the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. "This is insane." "Probably." Jake's mouth curved into a small smile. "But sometimes insane is better than impossible." In the back seat, Lucas had woken up and was looking around with the confused expression of a child who'd fallen asleep in one place and awakened in another. Emma was still watching Maya through the rearview mirror, Mr. Hoppers pressed tight against her chest. "I don't understand," Maya said. "Why would you do this?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, looking toward the shelter where the social worker had gone back inside. "Because 3 years ago, when I thought I was drowning, a neighbor I barely knew knocked on my door and offered to watch Sophia while I went to a grief counseling meeting. I said no the first time, and the second. But she kept asking, and eventually I said yes, and that one night turned into, well, it turned into me remembering I wasn't alone." "This isn't the same thing." "Isn't it?" Jake turned to look at her directly. "You're about to walk your children into that building because you think it's the only way to keep them safe. But what if it's not?" Maya felt tears she'd been holding back for weeks pressing against her eyes. "You don't understand. I can't ask someone I just met to. You're not asking. I'm offering." Jake's voice was gentle but firm. "And I'm not someone you just met. I'm someone who knows what it means to love a child so much you'd do anything to protect them, even if it breaks your heart." The tears came then, silent and hot. Maya pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold herself together. She was a staff sergeant in the United States Army. She'd performed emergency surgery in the back of a moving Humvee. She'd carried wounded soldiers to safety under enemy fire, but this loving someone so much it made you weak, this was the hardest thing she'd ever done. "Hey." Jake's voice was soft. "It's okay. It's not okay." Maya's words came out broken. "None of this is okay. They should be with their father. They should be safe in their own beds. Not being handed off to strangers, because I chose a job that takes me away from them. You didn't choose this situation. You're just trying to navigate it the best way you know how." Maya wiped her eyes and looked back at her children. Emma had unbuckled her seatbelt and was leaning forward, trying to hear their conversation. Lucas was awake now too, his thumb in his mouth, a habit he'd returned to after the divorce. "Mama's crying," Emma whispered to her brother. "I know," Lucas whispered back. Maya's heart cracked a little more. She turned to Jake. "If I said yes and, I'm not saying yes, what would that look like? It would look like me picking up your kids from school and helping with homework. It would look like bedtime stories and Saturday morning cartoons and doctor's appointments when they're sick. It would look like video calls with you whenever the time zones line up so they can tell you about their day. And what do you get out of it? Jake considered this. Honestly, the chance to pay forward something that was given to me. And, he paused, glancing toward the back seat. Sophia's been asking for siblings since she was 4. Maybe this is the universe's weird way of answering that prayer, at least temporarily. Maya studied his face, looking for signs of deception, of hidden motives. But all she saw was a man who understood loss, who understood love, who understood that sometimes the best you could do still felt like falling short. "This is crazy," she said again. "Yeah," Jake smiled. "Want to be crazy together?" Maya looked at the shelter, with its cheerful yellow paint and flower boxes. Then she looked at her children, who were watching her with complete trust, believing she would find a way to keep them safe, no matter what. Maybe she would. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay?" Maya took a shaky breath. "Okay, yes, if you're serious about this, if you really mean it." "I mean it." "Then yes." She looked at him directly. "But I need to know everything. Your background check, references, where you live, what your life looks like. I need to know my children will be safe." "Of course." Jake pulled out his phone. "I can call my supervisor right now. She can walk you through my credentials, references, home study, everything." Maya nodded, then turned to face her children. "Emma, Lucas, come up here for a minute." They unbuckled themselves and climbed into the front seat, Emma settling on Maya's lap while Lucas perched on the console between the seats. Up close, Maya could see the questions in Emma's eyes, the confusion in Lucas's. "This is Mr. Jake," she said. "He's offered to take care of you while Mama's away." Emma studied Jake with the serious expression she wore when meeting new people. "Do you have kids?" "I do. A little girl named Sophia. She's 7, just a year older than you. Does she like stuffed animals?" Emma held up Mr. Hopper's. "She loves them. She has a whole collection of teddy bears." Emma nodded approvingly. Lucas was still sucking his thumb, watching Jake with wide eyes. "What about trucks?" Lucas asked around his thumb. "Love trucks. We've got a whole bin of them in the playroom." Maya felt something loosen in her chest as she watched her children evaluate this stranger who was offering them sanctuary. They were resilient, more resilient than she'd given them credit for. "Mr. Jake," Emma said formally, "if we come stay with you, will you read us bedtime stories?" "Every night if you want." "And will you make sure we brush our teeth?" "Absolutely." "And will you help me write letters to Mama?" Jake's eyes met Maya's over Emma's head. "As many as you want to write." Emma looked at Lucas, who nodded solemnly. Then she looked back at Jake. "Okay," she said. "We accept your offer." Maya laughed despite herself, a sound caught between tears and relief. "Emma, you don't have to be so formal. Mama says we should always be polite when people are being kind." Jake's expression softened. "Your mama raised you right." The next hour passed in a blur of phone calls and paperwork. The real kind this time, not the surrender document she'd been holding. Jake's supervisor confirmed everything he'd said. Exemplary record, glowing references, a home study that had been completed just 6 months ago when he'd considered becoming a foster parent. By the time the sun was setting, Maya found herself following Jake's truck down a tree-lined street in a quiet neighborhood, her children chattering excitedly in the back seat about meeting Sophia and seeing the truck collection. Jake's house was exactly what she'd imagined, 2-story colonial with a wide front porch and a yard big enough for games of tag. Christmas lights still hung from the gutters, twinkling in the gathering dusk. As they pulled into the driveway, a little girl burst through the front door and ran toward Jake's truck. Sophia was taller than she'd looked in the photo, all legs and arms and boundless energy. When Jake climbed out of his truck, she launched herself into his arms. "Daddy, Mrs. Henderson said you were bringing visitors." Maya got out of her car and helped Emma and Lucas down. For a moment, The 4 children stood looking at each other. Emma holding Mr. Hoppers, Lucas still with his thumb in his mouth, Sophia bouncing on her toes with excitement. "Hi," Sophia said to Emma. "I'm Sophia. Do you want to see my room? I have glow in the dark stars on my ceiling." "Really?" Emma's eyes widened. "We had those at our old house before their father lost the house along with everything else." Maya's throat tightened. "Come on!" Sophia grabbed Emma's free hand. "Lucas, you can come too. I'll show you the trucks." And just like that, the 3 children disappeared into the house, leaving Maya and Jake standing alone in the driveway. "They'll be okay," Jake said quietly. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. She had less than 12 hours before she had to report for duty. 12 hours to memorize the sound of her children's laughter, to hold them close enough to last 18 months. "Come on," Jake said. "Let's get you all settled in." The guest bedroom had been Sophia's nursery once. Maya could tell by the way Jake hesitated in the doorway, his hand lingering on the light switch. The walls were painted a soft green neutral enough for any child, but there were still tiny nail holes where a mobile might have hung, and the closet door bore the faint outline of alphabet stickers that had been carefully removed. "I can put the kids in here together," Jake said, his voice careful, "or Emma can bunk with Sophia, and Lucas can have the smaller room down the hall." Maya set down Emma's suitcase and looked around. Through the window, she could see the backyard, a swing set, a sandbox, a garden bed covered with winter mulch. Normal things. Safe things. Together, I think. At least at first. She touched the window frame. They've been through a lot of changes lately. From somewhere in the house came the sound of children's voices, Sophia giving what sounded like a comprehensive tour, Emma asking careful questions, Lucas's occasional burst of laughter when something delighted him. "She's good with them," Maya said. "Sophia's been the only kid in this house for 4 years. She's thrilled to have playmates." Jake moved to open the closet door, revealing empty hangers waiting. "But if it gets overwhelming for any of them, we'll figure something else out." Maya nodded, then found herself just standing there, looking at the twin beds. Jake had somehow managed to set up in the 2 hours since they'd left his house to collect the children's belongings from her apartment. He'd thought of everything: matching comforters in blues and greens, a small bookshelf stocked with picture books, even a nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. "Jake," she turned to face him. "I need you to understand something." He waited. "I've never left them before. Not overnight, not even for a weekend. When I deployed before, they were with their father, and that was—" She struggled for words. "That was different. This is me trusting you with the most important things in my world. I know, if something happens to them while I'm gone, nothing will happen to them. You can't promise that." Jake was quiet for a moment, considering. "You're right. I can't promise they'll never get sick, or never fall off their bikes, or never have nightmares. But I can promise they'll be loved. I can promise they'll be safe. I can promise that if something does happen, they won't face it alone." Maya felt that tightness in her chest again. Through the wall, she could hear Sophia explaining the rules of some elaborate game involving stuffed animals and what sounded like a complex system of points. "They're going to ask for me," she said. "In the middle of the night, when they're scared. Emma still sometimes crawls into my bed when she has bad dreams about the accident." "What accident?" Maya closed her eyes. She'd been hoping to avoid this conversation tonight, but if Jake was going to care for her children, he needed to know. 6 months ago, David was driving them home from his weekend visit. He'd been drinking not enough to seem drunk, but enough that when the deer ran into the road. She opened her eyes and found Jake watching her with the same steady attention he'd given her in the parking lot. He overcorrected. The car rolled twice. Jesus. Emma broke her arm. Lucas had a concussion. David walked away without a scratch. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. She'd thought she'd worked through that anger months ago. "That's when I filed for full custody. That's when his parents decided I was the villain in their son's story." Jake sat down heavily on one of the twin beds. "And Emma still has nightmares. About the car rolling. About not being able to find Lucas in the dark. About—" Maya's voice caught. about me not being there to help them. But you were there, after. I was. But she was 5 years old and scared and hurt, and the person who was supposed to protect them was the one who put them in danger. Maya moved to the window again, needing something to look at besides Jake's understanding expression. She's afraid it will happen again, that the people taking care of her will make choices that hurt her. Then I'll have to make sure she knows that won't happen here. Maya turned. How? By being consistent. By following through on what I say I'll do. By letting her test the boundaries until she believes they're real. Jake stood up. I work with kids who've been through trauma, Maya. I know it's not about grand gestures. It's about small promises, kept over and over again. From down the hall came a crash, followed by immediate silence, the kind of silence that meant children were frozen, waiting to see if they were in trouble. Uh-oh. Sophia's voice drifted toward them. That was an accident. Jake smiled and headed for the door. Duty calls. Maya followed him down the hallway to what turned out to be a playroom, lined with bookcases and storage bins. In the center of the room, Lucas stood surrounded by what had clearly been a tower of blocks before it became a scattered mess on the hardwood floor. His eyes were wide with the fear of a child who'd learned that accidents could have consequences far beyond broken toys. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to. Jake knelt down to Lucas's level. Hey, buddy, it's okay. Blocks are for building, and sometimes buildings fall down. That's how we learn to build them stronger next time. I'm not in trouble? Not even a little bit. Jake started gathering blocks. Want to help me clean up so we can build something else? Lucas nodded eagerly and dropped to his knees, his small hands working to stack blocks in Jake's growing pile. Emma and Sophia had been building their own tower in the corner, but Maya could see Emma watching the interaction carefully, cataloging Jake's response for future reference. Mr. Jake, Emma said after a moment, if we make a mess at dinner, will you get mad? I might ask you to help clean it up, but I won't get mad. What if we forget to put our toys away? I'll remind you. What if we're loud during quiet time? Jake paused in his block gathering. Emma, are you worried about making me upset? Emma nodded solemnly. Come here for a minute. Emma approached cautiously. Mr. Hoppers clutched against her chest. Jake sat back on his heels so they were at eye level. In this house, he said gently, there's no yelling. There's no punishment for accidents. There's no walking on eggshells, wondering if the grown-ups are going to get scary. Promise? Emma's voice was very small. I promise. And Sophia can tell you I keep my promises. He does. Sophia chimed in from across the room. He promised to read me every single Magic Tree House book, and we're already on number 15. Emma looked at her mother, seeking confirmation that this was real, that she was allowed to believe it. Mr. Jake seems like someone who keeps his word, Maya said softly. Something in Emma's posture relaxed, not completely, but enough that she let Jake show her how to sort the blocks by color as they cleaned up. The evening that followed felt surreal in its normalcy. Jake made spaghetti while the children played in the living room, their voices mixing in the easy way of kids who were learning to be friends. Maya helped where she could, but mostly she watched, memorizing the way Lucas giggled when Sophia tickled him, the way Emma carefully explained the proper way to hold Mr. Hoppers, the way Jake moved through his kitchen with the practiced ease of a man who'd been cooking for his daughter for years. They're going to be okay, she said as Jake drained the pasta. They are. I keep thinking I should feel guilty for leaving them with someone I just met. Jake glanced at her. But you don't. I should, but I don't. Maya shook her head. What does that say about me? It says you trust your instincts. It says you can recognize kindness when you see it. Jake ladled sauce over the noodles. It says you're a good mother who found a way to keep her children safe, even when all the options felt impossible. Dinner was chaotic in the best way, 3 children talking over each other, sharing stories and jokes, and the kind of innocent observations that made adults remember what it felt like to see the world as an adventure instead of a series of problems to solve. Maya found herself relaxing for the first time in months, watching her children be children again. But as bedtime approached, reality crept back in. She would leave for the base at 500. In 8 hours, she would begin the longest separation of her life from the two people who mattered most. "Mama," Emma said as Maya tucked her into one of the twin beds, "will you write to us?" "Every day that I can." "Will you send pictures?" "So many pictures, you'll get tired of seeing my face." Emma giggled, but then her expression grew serious. "Mama, what if you forget us?" Maya's heart clenched. She sat down on the edge of the bed and smoothed Emma's hair away from her face. "Baby girl, I could never forget you. You and Lucas are part of my heart. Even when I'm far away, you're always with me." "But what if we forget you?" "Then you look at this." Maya pulled a small photo album from her purse, something she'd put together during the sleepless hours of the previous night. "Pictures of us together. And you remember that Mama loves you bigger than the sky, deeper than the ocean, and longer than forever." Emma studied the album, turning pages slowly. There were photos from their last vacation, from lazy Sunday mornings, from birthday parties and Christmas mornings, and ordinary Tuesday afternoons that had become precious in retrospect. "Will you read to Lucas too?" Emma asked. Maya looked across the room to where Lucas was already drowsy in his bed, listening to Jake's quiet voice as he read from a picture book about trucks. Of course. She spent the next hour moving between the beds, reading stories and singing lullabies and answering the endless questions that children ask when they're trying to postpone sleep. Jake stayed too, understanding without being told that these last moments needed to be perfect, needed to be enough to last. Finally, both children were asleep, Emma curled around Mr. Hopper's, Lucas with his thumb in his mouth and his other hand twisted in his blanket. Maya and Jake stood in the doorway, watching them breathe. "Thank you," Maya whispered. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you come home to find them happy and healthy and still mad at you for leaving." Maya smiled despite the ache in her chest. "They will be mad, won't they?" "Probably. That's normal. That's love." They moved to the living room, where Jake poured 2 cups of coffee, and they sat on opposite ends of his couch, the space between them filled with everything they didn't know about each other yet. "Tell me about Syria," Jake said. "Forward operating base outside Damascus. Trauma surgery mostly. Civilians caught in crossfire. Soldiers who step on things they shouldn't step on." Maya wrapped her hands around her mug. "It's good work. Important work. But you wish you didn't have to choose between serving your country and being with your kids." "Something like that." Maya looked toward the stairs, where her children slept in beds that weren't theirs, in a house that wasn't home, with a man who was still essentially a stranger. "How do you do it? How do you trust that you're making the right choices for someone else's child?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "You know what I learned when Sarah got sick? That there are no perfect choices. There are just choices you can live with." He set down his coffee cup. "I can live with helping your kids feel safe while you're gone. Can you live with letting me?" Maya studied his face in the lamplight. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and worry, but also laugh lines that suggested joy hadn't been entirely absent from his life. He had kind hands and patient eyes, and the sort of steady presence that children gravitated toward. "Yes," she said finally, "I think I can." They talked until almost midnight about logistics and emergency contacts, about the children's schedules and preferences, about how to reach her if something went wrong. But underneath the practical conversation was something else. Two parents who understood that love sometimes meant making impossible choices, and that the greatest act of trust was letting someone else love your child when you couldn't be there to do it yourself. At 400, Maya's alarm went off. She dressed quietly in her uniform, then crept into the children's room for one last look. Emma and Lucas were still sleeping, peaceful and safe in their borrowed beds. She didn't wake them. Sometimes goodbye was harder than hello. Jake was waiting for her in the kitchen with a travel mug of coffee and a thermos of soup for later. "Their school information is on the refrigerator," Maya said, going through her mental checklist one more time. "Emma's allergic to tree nuts. Lucas still needs his nightlight. If they get sick—" "Maya," Jake's voice was gentle, "I've got this." She nodded, then pulled 2 sealed envelopes from her pocket. Letters. For when they ask why I left without saying goodbye, Jake took the letters carefully. I'll give them these at breakfast. Maya shouldered her duffel bag and walked toward the front door, then stopped. Jake? Yeah? Take care of yourself, too. They need you healthy and happy, not perfect. Jake smiled. Same goes for you, Staff Sergeant. Come home safe. Maya stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness, where her taxi was waiting to take her to the base. As she slid into the back seat, she looked back at Jake's house, at the windows behind which her children slept, at the man who had offered them sanctuary when she had nowhere else to turn. For the first time in months, she felt something that might have been peace. 3 months into deployment, Maya had learned to read time zones in her sleep. 200 in Damascus meant 1,000. 800 back home, dinner time, homework time, the golden hour when Jake would set up his laptop on the kitchen counter so she could watch her children eat spaghetti with too much cheese and tell her about their days in overlapping, breathless sentences. But tonight, the video call screen remained black. Maya stared at her laptop in the cramped tent that served as her quarters, watching the connection attempt to load. Around her, the base hummed with its usual nighttime activity generators, distant conversations, the occasional helicopter overhead. But all she could focus on was the silence from home. She tried calling Jake's phone, straight to voicemail, the house phone. No answer. At 245, her phone finally buzzed with a text. Kids fine, at hospital with Sophia. Nothing serious. We'll call tomorrow. Maya read the message 3 times, her medic's training cataloging all the ways nothing serious could still mean everything was wrong. A broken bone was nothing serious. Appendicitis was nothing serious if caught early. Concussions, allergic reactions, fevers that spiked too high, too fast, all nothing serious until they were. She spent the next 6 hours performing surgery on a contractor who'd stepped on an IED, her hands steady and sure, while her mind raced through every possible disaster that could have taken her children to a hospital. When she finally had a break, she found 4 missed calls from an unknown Tennessee number. The voicemail was Emma's voice, small and scared. Mama? Sophia got really sick, and we're at the hospital, and I don't know where you are, but I need you, and… The message cut off abruptly. Maya called the number back immediately. A woman answered, tired, professional. Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, Pediatric Unit. This is Staff Sergeant Maya Chen. My children, Emma and Lucas Cheney, believe they're there with a family friend. I got a call. Hold, please. The hold music felt like an eternity. Maya closed her eyes and tried to center herself, to find the calm competence that had carried her through countless emergencies. But this was different. This was her children, thousands of miles away, scared and needing her. Miss Chen? A different voice, male and gentle. This is Dr. Martinez. Your children are fine. They're here because Mr. Morrison's daughter was admitted with what appears to be appendicitis. She's stable, in surgery now, but the children were worried, and Mr. Morrison thought it best to have them nearby. Relief flooded through her so suddenly she had to sit down. They're not hurt? Not hurt. Just scared for their friend. Mr. Morrison asked me to tell you he's sorry he couldn't call earlier. Things happened very quickly. Can I speak to them? Of course. They're right here. A moment later, Emma's voice filled the line. Mama? Hi, baby girl. I heard Sophia got sick. She was throwing up and crying, and her tummy hurt really bad. Emma's words tumbled out in a rush. Mr. Jake was scared too. I could tell, even though he was trying to be brave. And Lucas cried because he thought maybe we all had to go to the hospital and get cut open. Maya closed her eyes. Are you scared? A little. But Mr. Jake explained everything. He said Sophia has something called appendicitis, and the doctors are going to take out the part that's making her sick, and then she'll be better. That's exactly right. And Mr. Jake is taking good care of you? Uh-huh. He brought coloring books and goldfish crackers, and he let us stay up past bedtime because it was a special situation. Maya smiled despite her worry. Is Lucas okay? He's sleeping on Mr. Jake's lap. He was really tired from being worried. Through the phone, Maya could hear the ambient sounds of a hospital waiting room, hushed conversations, the beep of machines, the soft squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum. She'd spent enough time in hospitals to know the particular anxiety that lived in those spaces, the way time moved differently when someone you loved was in surgery. "Emma, can you put Mr. Jake on the phone?" "Okay, I love you, Mama." "I love you too, sweetheart." There was shuffling, then Jake's voice, low and tired. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I know how this must have looked, getting that text with no explanation." "How is she?" "Good. The surgeon says it was caught early, textbook case. She'll be sore for a few days, but kids bounce back fast from this stuff." Maya heard something in his voice, relief, yes, but also something deeper. The particular exhaustion of a parent who'd spent hours wondering if they were about to lose the most important person in their world. "Jake, are you okay?" A pause. "Yeah, it's just..." When she woke up crying at 2 in the morning, and I saw how much pain she was in. His voice caught slightly. It brought back a lot of memories I thought I'd dealt with. Of course it had. Maya pressed her phone closer to her ear, wishing she could reach through the connection and offer him the same steady presence he'd given her children. "Tell me what happened." She'd been complaining about her stomach all day, but I thought it was something she ate. You know how kids are, one day they're dying from a hangnail, the next day they're running around with actual fevers. Jake's voice was getting steadier as he talked, but around midnight, she started really crying, different crying, and when I took her temperature, what was it? 103.2. And she was guarding her right side, wouldn't let me touch her abdomen. Maya heard him take a shaky breath. All I could think about was Sarah, how the symptoms started so subtly, how we almost missed the signs because we thought it was just a stomach bug. Maya felt her chest tighten with understanding. "But you didn't miss them. You got her here in time." "I know. I know that logically. But when you're sitting in a hospital waiting room at 3 in the morning, logic doesn't mean much." "How are Emma and Lucas handling it?" "Better than I am, honestly. Emma's been reading to Lucas from one of Sophia's books. She keeps checking on me, asking if I need water or if I want her to share her crackers." Jake's voice warmed slightly. "She's got your instincts, Maya. Sees when people are hurting and wants to help." Maya smiled. "She's always been like that. Even as a toddler, if someone was crying, she'd bring them her favorite toy." Lucas drew Sophia a picture of a truck. Said it would make her feel better when she wakes up. "They love her." "Yeah, and she loves them. That's part of what makes this hard, watching them worry about someone they care about. They've had enough loss already." Maya closed her eyes, wishing she could be there to comfort her children, to hold Jake's hand while he worried about his daughter, to be useful instead of helpless. "Jake, I'm so sorry I can't be there." "Hey, no, don't do that. You're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. We're managing here. But you shouldn't have to manage alone. I'm not alone. I've got Emma making sure everyone stays hydrated and Lucas sharing his artistic talents with the nursing staff. We're a team." Despite everything, Maya found herself smiling. "They're good kids. The best. Sarah would have loved them." It was the first time Jake had mentioned his wife, in present tense, as if she were still part of their daily lives. Maya understood that tooth-way grief made time fluid, made the past feel immediate and the future uncertain. "She sounds like she was an amazing person." She was. She always said that love multiplies instead of dividing, that the more people you love, the more love you have to give, not less. Jake paused. "I think she'd be happy about this arrangement. About Sophia having siblings, even if it's temporary." Even if it's temporary. The words hit Maya unexpectedly. Somewhere in the past 3 months, she'd stopped thinking about this as a temporary solution. Stopped counting down the days until she could reclaim her children and go back to their old life. Maybe because their old life had been broken. Maybe because this new configuration, Jake and Sophia, Emma and Lucas, all of them orbiting around each other in careful, loving patterns, felt less like an emergency measure and more like a family. "Maya? You still there?" "Yeah, sorry. Long day here." She rubbed her eyes. "Can you put Emma back on?" "Of course. And Maya, thank you. For what? For trusting me with this. With them. I know it can't be easy, being so far away when things like this happen. Maya thought about that morning 3 months ago, sitting in the shelter parking lot with a clipboard full of surrender papers. Thought about Jake sliding into her passenger seat like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known how to say. "You saved us," she said quietly. "All of us. You know that, right? We saved each other." Emma came back on the line then, full of updates about the hospital vending machines and the way Lucas had made friends with a therapy dog named Buster. Maya listened to her daughter's voice and felt something she hadn't experienced in months, the particular peace that came from knowing your children were not just safe, but loved. After they hung up, Maya sat in her tent and stared at the photo she kept taped to her laptop, Screen Jake and the 3 kids at a park, all of them laughing at something Sophia had said. It had arrived in an email 2 weeks ago with the subject line, "Sunday Afternoon Adventures." Looking at it now, Maya realized she couldn't tell which children belonged to which parent. They all looked like they belonged together. The next morning brought news that Sophia's surgery had gone perfectly and she was already asking for ice cream and complaining about the hospital bed. Maya video called during their lunch, which was her breakfast, and found 4 faces crowded around Jake's phone screen. Sophia pale but grinning, Emma and Lucas flanking her like protective guards, Jake looking tired but relieved. "Mama!" Lucas's face filled the screen. "Look what I drew for Sophia." He held up a picture that was mostly purple scribbles, but definitely contained what might have been a truck. Sophia grabbed the phone. "Miss Maya, I got my appendix out, and the doctor said I was very brave, and I only cried a little bit, and now I get to eat popsicles for breakfast." "That sounds like the best kind of breakfast," Maya said, smiling at Sophia's enthusiasm. In the background, she could see Jake organizing what looked like a small mountain of get-well cards. "Everyone at school made me cards," Sophia continued, "and Mrs. Peterson from next door brought cookies, and Emma read me 3 whole chapters of Charlotte's Web yesterday while I was sleepy." Maya's throat tightened. "Emma, that was very thoughtful." Emma appeared at the edge of the screen, still shy about video calls but getting braver. "She was scared, so I thought maybe a story would help. You always read to us when we don't feel good." "That's exactly what I would have done." "Really?" "Really. You took good care of your friend." Emma beamed, and Maya felt that familiar ache of missing these moments, these small victories and everyday kindnesses that her children were learning to give and receive. But she also felt something else, pride. Her children were thriving. They were learning to love people outside their small family circle. They were becoming the kind of people who brought stories to sick friends and drew pictures to make people smile. Maybe being apart was breaking her heart, but it wasn't breaking theirs. Maybe that was enough. "Mama," Emma said, leaning closer to the screen, "when you come home, will you still live with us at Mr. Jake's house?" The question caught Maya off guard. What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I mean, will we go back to our apartment, or will we stay here? Because Lucas and I like it here. We like having Sophia as our sister, and Mr. Jake as our— what is he? He's not our daddy, but he takes care of us like a daddy." Maya glanced at Jake, who was listening to this conversation with an unreadable expression. They'd never talked about what would happen when she came home. She'd assumed they'd go back to their old life, their own space, their small family of 3. But looking at her children's faces, she realized they'd built something new here, something they didn't want to lose. "We'll figure it out when I get home," she said finally. "The most important thing is that we're all together again." "But we like being together with Jake and Sophia too," Lucas piped up. "Can't we all be together?" Maya felt her heart skip. That's something the grown-ups will need to talk about." She caught Jake's eye again, and this time she saw something there that made her breath catch. Hope, maybe, or possibility. Or maybe just the recognition that some families weren't born, they were chosen, one small act of love at a time. "Okay," Emma said, satisfied with her mother's non-answer in the way that children often were. "But I think we should all stay together. We're good at being a family." After the call ended, Maya sat in her tent and thought about Emma's words. We're good at being a family. They were. Somehow, impossibly, they were. The question was, what were they going to do about it? The homecoming ceremony was supposed to be joyful. Maya stood in the gymnasium at Fort Campbell, surrounded by yellow ribbons and welcome home banners, watching other families reunite in tears and laughter and the kind of desperate embraces that came after 18 months of separation. She should have been scanning the crowd for her children's faces, counting the seconds until she could hold them again. Instead, she found herself thinking about Jake's text from that morning. Flight delayed. We'll be there as soon as we can. The simple message had sent her into a spiral of anxiety that had nothing to do with logistics and everything to do with the conversation they still hadn't had. 18 months of video calls and careful emails, of watching her children build a life that didn't quite include her, of falling asleep to Jake's voice as he updated her on soccer games and school plays and the thousand small moments that made up a childhood. 18 months of learning to love someone she'd never touched. Sergeant Chen? Maya turned to find Colonel Martinez approaching, his dress uniform crisp despite the July heat. Sir, hell of a deployment. The work you did at that field hospital, the lives you saved, it won't be forgotten. Thank you, sir. Martinez studied her face with the attention of someone who'd been reading soldiers for 3 decades. You seem nervous for someone about to be reunited with her kids. Maya managed a smile. It's been a long time, sir. But they're in good hands, from what I hear. Morrison, right? Good man. His work with the Family Readiness Group during your deployment was exemplary. His work with the Family Readiness Group, Maya hadn't known about that. Another piece of Jake's life she was still discovering, even after all this time. Yes, sir. He's been incredible. Funny how things work out sometimes. You leave your kids with a stranger, come home to find they've built themselves a family. Martinez's expression was knowing. Question is, what do you do with that information? Before Maya could respond, the gymnasium doors burst open and a small hurricane in a yellow dress came running toward her. Sophia reached her first, launching herself into Maya's arms with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for people who'd been missed. Ms. Maya, you're home. You're finally home. Maya caught her, spinning once before setting her down, and found herself looking into eyes that were bright with tears and joy, and something that looked remarkably like relief. I missed you too, sweetheart. Then Emma was there, more cautious but no less emotional, holding Mr. Hoppers in one hand and reaching for Maya with the other. Maya knelt down and pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the particular sweetness of a 6-year-old who'd grown 2 inches in 18 months. Mama, Emma whispered against her neck. You came back. I promised I would. Lucas hung back for a moment, suddenly shy, before Jake's gentle hand on his shoulder encouraged him forward. He'd lost the baby roundness in his face, gained a confidence in his posture that spoke of feeling safe in the world. Mama, he said formally, like he was greeting a dignitary. We missed you very much. Maya laughed and scooped him up, marveling at how solid he felt, how much heavier. I missed you too, buddy. So much. Over the children's heads, she met Jake's eyes. He looked different, older maybe, or just more settled. His hair was longer than she remembered, and there were new lines around his eyes, but his smile was the same steady warmth she'd carried with her through 18 months of video calls. Welcome home, he said quietly. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. For everything. Mama, Sophia tugged on Maya's uniform. We have so much to show you. I learned to ride a bike without training wheels, and Emma lost 2 teeth, and Lucas can write his whole name now, and we have a garden in the backyard with tomatoes and sunflowers and... Sophia, breathe. Jake laughed. She just got off a plane. Maybe we should get her home first? Home. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with questions neither of them had been brave enough to ask. The drive to Jake's house to the place her children had been calling home for 18 months passed in a blur of chatter from the back seat. Emma and Lucas and Sophia took turns updating Maya on everything she'd missed. their voices overlapping in the comfortable chaos of siblings who'd learned to share attention. Maya found herself watching Jake's hands on the steering wheel, the easy way he navigated the familiar streets, the automatic way he adjusted the air conditioning when Sophia complained about being too warm. These were the hands that had braided Emma's hair for school pictures, that had held Lucas during nightmares, that had signed permission slips and packed lunches and performed the thousand small acts of care that kept children safe and happy. These were the hands she'd fallen in love with through 18 months of secondhand stories and video calls that ended too soon. Jake's house looked exactly the same and completely different. The same yellow siding and wide front porch, but now there were bikes in the driveway, 2 new ones, sized for growing children. The garden Sophia had mentioned was visible from the street, a riot of vegetables and flowers that spoke of patient tending and small hands learning to nurture growing things. "Come see our room." Emma grabbed Maya's hand as soon as they were out of the car. "Mr. Jake painted it, and we got new bedspreads, and there's a reading corner with a lamp just for us." The guest bedroom had been transformed. The neutral green walls were now a soft lavender, and the twin beds had been replaced with bunks Emma's choice. For the top, decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars, Lucas's bottom bunk a cozy cave hung with string lights. There were bookshelves full of well-worn stories, a desk for homework, art supplies organized in labeled containers. It looked like the room of children who were loved, children who were expected to stay. "It's beautiful," Maya said, her voice thick. "Mr. Jake let us pick everything," Lucas said proudly. "Even the rug, see? It has trucks on it." Maya knelt down to examine the rug, but what she was really doing was trying to process the magnitude of what she was seeing. This wasn't temporary furniture or borrowed space. This was a room that had been created with intention, with the assumption that Emma and Lucas belonged here. "He made us a family," Emma said quietly, settling beside Maya on the truck, patterned rug. "When you were gone, and we were scared, he made us feel like we belonged somewhere." Maya's throat tightened. "You always belonged somewhere, baby girl. You belonged with me. I know, but we also belong here, with Jake and Sophia." Emma looked up at her with those serious eyes that always seemed too old for her face. "Is that okay?" Maya pulled her daughter close, struggling to find words that were honest without being devastating. "Of course it's okay. Love isn't like pee, it doesn't get smaller when you share it." "That's what Mr. Jake says too. He's right." They spent the afternoon in careful celebration, welcome home lunch that stretched into dinner, stories and laughter and the particular exhaustion that came from too much emotion packed into too few hours. Maya watched her children navigate their life with Jake and Sophia, noting the easy intimacy of shared jokes and established routines. She also watched Jake watching her, his expression unreadable, as he tried to gauge how she was handling this homecoming that felt more like an introduction to a life she'd had no part in building. After the children were in beta process that now involved 3 bedtime stories, 2 glasses of water, and negotiations over who got to sleep with which stuffed animal, Maya and Jake found themselves alone in his living room for the first time in 18 months. The silence stretched between them, full of everything they hadn't said in careful video calls monitored by small ears. "They're incredible," Maya said finally. "What you've done with them, how happy they are." "Maya, don't. Don't what? Don't thank me for loving your children. Don't act like I did you some huge favor." Jake's voice was gentle but firm. "I didn't take them in out of charity. I took them in because they needed a family, and so did we." Maya studied his face in the lamplight. "And now?" "Now what?" "Now I'm back. Now you've done what I asked, kept them safe while I was gone. You've fulfilled your obligation." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a summer storm was building, the first distant rumbles of thunder mixing with the sound of rain beginning to fall. "Is that what you think this was? An obligation?" Maya felt tears she'd been holding back all day pressing against her eyes. "I don't know what to think. I don't know where I fit in their lives anymore. I don't know where I fit in your life." "Maya, they don't need me the way they used to. Emma braids her own hair now. Lucas ties his own shoes. They have inside jokes I don't understand, and friends I've never met, and a whole life that happened without me. That's what growing up looks like. It's not about you being gone, isn't it? Maya's voice cracked. They call this place home, Jake. Not our apartment, not wherever we're going to live next. Here, with you. Jake moved closer, close enough that she could see the concern in his eyes. What are you really afraid of? The question hit her like a physical blow. Maya closed her eyes, trying to find the courage to say what she'd been thinking since the moment she'd stepped off the plane. I'm afraid that I'm not enough anymore, she whispered. I'm afraid that they don't need me the way they need you. I'm afraid that the best thing I can do for them is step back and let them keep the family they've built. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Maya's eyes snapped open. Excuse me? Maya, do you know what Emma's nightmares were about the first month you were gone? She shook her head. Not the car accident. Not her father. They were about you not coming home. About her having to live without her mama forever. Jake's voice was steady but intense. Do you know what Lucas did every morning for the first 6 weeks? He'd go to the front window and watch for your car because he couldn't quite believe you were really coming back. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. And Sophia, who's never had a mother, who spent 4 years learning to build a family with just Mito, you know what she told me 3 months ago? What? She said she hoped you'd like her enough to let her keep being Emma and Lucas's sister when you came home. She said she hoped you might want to be her mama too, just a little bit. Maya's tears came then, silent and overwhelming. Jake, you want to know where you fit? Jake reached for her hands, holding them gently. You fit exactly where you've always fit. At the center of everything. You're not competing with me for your children's love, Maya. You're the reason they know how to love in the first place. But they have you now. They have this life. They have us. All of us. If you want that. Jake's voice dropped to almost a whisper. If you're willing to consider that maybe what we've built here isn't temporary. Maybe it's just the family we were all meant to have. Maya looked into his eyes and saw 18 months of love and patience and hope she'd been too afraid to recognize. Jake, A small voice from the stairs interrupted them. Mama, are you crying? Emma stood on the bottom step in her pajamas, Mr. Hoppers clutched against her chest, her hair a tangle of sleep and worry. Come here, sweetheart, Maya said, holding out her arms. Emma padded across the room and climbed into Maya's lap, fitting herself into the space that had been empty for 18 months. Are you sad? Not sad. Just feeling a lot of things at once. Good things or bad things? Maya looked at Jake, who was watching them with an expression so tender it made her heart ache. Then she looked around the living room at the bookshelves full of children's stories, at the coffee table covered with art projects and homework papers, at the life her children had built with this man who'd opened his door to strangers and somehow made them family. Good things, she said finally. Very good things. Emma nodded seriously. Mama, do you like it here? I love it here. Do you like Mr. Jake? Maya met Jake's eyes over her daughter's head. I like him very much. Good, because we want you to stay. All of us want you to stay. Even Sophia? Especially Sophia. She made me promise to ask if you wanted to be her mama too. Emma tilted her head back to look at Maya directly. Do you? Maya felt her heart expand to accommodate this new possibility, this child who'd loved her from a distance and now wanted to love her up close. I would be honored to be Sophia's mama. If she'll have me. She will. She's been practicing calling you Mom in the mirror. Maya laughed despite her tears. Has she? Uh-huh. And Lucas has been practicing too, but he calls Mr. Jake Daddy sometimes when he thinks no one is listening. Maya looked at Jake, who had gone very still. Does he? Jake nodded, his voice rough when he spoke. Would that be okay with you? Maya thought about her children's father, who'd chosen addiction over family, who'd put them in danger and walked away without looking back. Then she thought about Jake, who'd read bedtime stories and attended school plays and worried through hospital visits and loved her children as if they'd been his all along. More than okay, she said softly. Emma beamed. So we can all stay together? Like a real family? Maya looked at Jake, at this man who'd saved them all without asking for anything in return, who'd shown her children what love looked like when it was steady and safe and sure. "If Mr. Jake wants us to stay," she said. Jake's answer was to reach for them both, pulling Maya and Emma into an embrace that felt like coming home and starting over all at the same time. "I want you to stay," he whispered against Maya's hair. "I've wanted you to stay since the day I met you." "Really? Really? I love you, Maya. I love your children. I love the family we've accidentally built together." Maya pulled back to look at him, this man who'd become everything she hadn't known she needed. "I love you too. So much, it scares me." "Good scared or bad scared?" Maya smiled, echoing Emma's earlier question. "Good scared, very good scared." They were interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the stairs, Sophia and Lucas, drawn by voices and the kind of emotional gravity that children always seem to sense. "Are we having a family meeting without me?" Sophia demanded, hands on her hips in mock indignation. "Yeah," Lucas added, climbing onto the couch beside Jake. "That's not fair." "You're right," Maya said, making room for both of them. Family meetings should include the whole family. They gathered together on Jake's couch, Maya and Jake in the middle, Emma curled against Maya's side, Lucas leaning into Jake's shoulder, Sophia perched on the armrest like a tiny sentinel watching over them all. "So," Jake said, looking around at all of them, "what do you think? Should we make this official?" "What does official mean?" Lucas asked. "It means we all live together all the time," Emma explained with the patience of an older sister. "It means Maya is my mama and Sophia's mama, and Jake is my daddy and Lucas's daddy, and we're all siblings." "Like a real family," Sophia added. "We already are a real family," Maya said gently. "We have been for months. This just means we don't have to pretend it's temporary anymore." "I vote yes," Sophia declared. "Me too," Emma agreed. "Me three," Lucas chimed in. They all looked at Maya and Jake, who were looking at each other with the kind of wonder that came from finding something you hadn't known you were looking for. "All in favor?" Jake asked softly. 5 hands went up in the air, and Maya felt her heart settle into a rhythm it had never known before, the steady beat of belonging, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Outside, the summer storm was passing, leaving behind the fresh scent of rain and the promise of clear skies ahead. Inside, a family sat together in the lamplight, planning their future and marveling at the beautiful, impossible way that love could multiply instead of divide, creating abundance from what had once felt like loss. They were home. 6 months later, Maya woke to the sound of pancakes, sizzling, and children arguing about syrup distribution. She lay in bed for a moment, savoring the ordinary chaos of a Saturday morning in their house, not Jake's house anymore, but theirs, officially and legally, and in all the ways that mattered. Through the bedroom door, she could hear Sophia explaining the proper pancake-to-syrup ratio with the authority of a child who'd appointed herself the family's breakfast expert. "You have to make little pools," Sophia was saying, "like lakes. That way every bite has the right amount." "I like my pancakes swimming," Lucas countered, his voice thick with the stubbornness of a 5-year-old who'd recently discovered he could have opinions about things. "Swimming pancakes are gross," Emma declared. "They get all soggy." Maya smiled into her pillow. These were the arguments she'd missed during deployment, the perfectly ridiculous debates that happened when children felt safe enough to care deeply about small things. Jake's arm tightened around her waist, and she realized he'd been awake too, listening to their children with the same quiet contentment that had become the baseline of their life together. "Good morning, Mrs. Morrison," he murmured against her neck. Maya turned in his arms, still marveling at the way her name sounded when he said it. They'd been married for 3 months. Now a small ceremony in Jake's backyard with 3 children as witnesses, and enough flowers to make Sophia declare it the most beautiful wedding in the history of weddings. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison." She kissed him softly. "Think we should rescue the pancakes?" "I think our children are perfectly capable of negotiating their own syrup treaties." As if summoned by his words, Lucas appeared in their doorway wearing pajamas and a serious expression. "Mama, Daddy, we need help," Sophia says there are rules about pancakes, but she won't tell us where the rule book is. Maya bit back a laugh. There's no rule book, buddy. Everyone gets to eat their pancakes however they like them. See? Emma's voice drifted from the kitchen. I told you Mama would say that. Lucas nodded sagely and disappeared back down the hallway. Maya could hear him relaying this information to his sisters, because that's what they were now, officially and completely. Emma and Lucas and Sophia, siblings by choice and love and the particular magic that happened when children decided to claim each other. I should get up, Maya said, though she made no move to leave the warmth of Jake's arms. Saturday is grocery shopping day. Saturday is also sleeping-in day. Since when? Since I decided that my wife deserves at least one morning a week where she doesn't wake up to an alarm clock. Maya studied his face in the morning light filtering through their bedroom curtains. Even after all this time, she sometimes had to remind herself that this was real, that she'd somehow found her way to a life where someone loved her enough to want her to sleep in on Saturdays. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, reading her expression with the fluency that came from months of learning each other's faces. "Just this. Us. How did we get so lucky?" Jake was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I don't think it was luck. I think it was choice. 100 small choices to keep showing up for each other." Maya thought about that, about the choice to trust a stranger in a parking lot, about the choice to love children who weren't biologically his, about the choice to build something new instead of mourning what was lost. "Jake? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd walked into that shelter instead of sitting in your car?" "Every day for the first month," he admitted. "But not anymore." "Why not?" "Because I don't believe in alternate timelines. I believe we were always going to find each other somehow. Maybe not that day, maybe not that way, but somehow." Maya turned to face him fully. "You really believe that?" "I believe that some people are meant to be family. I believe that love recognizes love, even when it's wearing camouflage and carrying surrender papers." Before Maya could respond, Sophia burst through their bedroom door with the dramatic flair of a child who'd inherited her father's tendency toward grand gestures. "Emergency family meeting?" she announced. "In the kitchen, right now." Maya and Jake exchanged amused glances. Emergency family meetings had become Sophia's favorite way to handle everything from lost library books to negotiations over bedtime extensions. "What's the emergency, sweetheart?" Maya asked, sitting up. "Lucas put syrup in his orange juice, and now Emma is crying because she says it's disgusting, and Lucas is crying because Emma said it was disgusting, and I don't know what to do." Maya bit back a smile. "Okay, we'll be right there. Hurry, the pancakes are getting cold." Sophia disappeared as quickly as she'd arrived, leaving Maya and Jake to navigate the delicate art of parenting through syrup-related crisis management. "Think this qualifies as a real emergency?" Jake asked, pulling on a t-shirt. "In the eyes of our 7-year-old crisis coordinator?" "Absolutely." They found the kitchen in a state of controlled chaos. Emma was indeed crying the frustrated tears of a child who'd encountered something that violated her sense of order. Lucas was standing by the sink, his orange juice glass in his hands, looking defiant and sorry in equal measure. "I wanted to see what it tasted like," he said as soon as he saw Maya and Jake. "And it tastes good, but Emma says it's wrong." "It's not wrong," Maya said gently, kneeling down to his level. "It's just different. Sometimes different things seem scary to other people." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But Mama, syrup doesn't go in orange juice. It goes on pancakes." "Usually, yes. But there's no law that says Lucas can't try something new." Maya looked between her children, all three of them now, a fact that still filled her with wonder. "Emma, how do you think Lucas feels when you tell him his experiment is disgusting?" Emma considered this, with the gravity of a child learning to navigate sibling relationships. Probably sad. "And Lucas, how do you think Emma feels when you do something that seems weird to her?" "Confused?" "Exactly. So what do you think we should do?" Emma and Lucas looked at each other, the long, wordless communication of siblings working through a problem together. I could say sorry for calling it disgusting, Emma offered. And I could try it without syrup next time, Lucas added. Or, Sophia interjected from her position as pancake quality control supervisor, we could all try syrup in our orange juice and see what happens. Maya looked at Jake, who was trying not to laugh. What do you think, Daddy? Scientific experiment? I think, Jake said solemnly, that this family has never backed down from a challenge. What followed was the kind of morning that would become family legend for adults and children sitting around the kitchen table, experimenting with increasingly ridiculous beverage combinations while pancakes grew cold and forgotten. Syrup in orange juice, surprisingly good, according to Lucas and Jake. Syrup in coffee, Maya's contribution, which earned unanimous approval. Syrup in milk, Sophia's idea, which was deemed interesting but not repeatable. Emma, the initial skeptic, surprised everyone by declaring that syrup in apple juice was actually pretty tasty, a pronouncement that made Lucas beam with the pride of a vindicated scientist. We should write this down, Sophia announced, already reaching for the notebook they kept for family meeting minutes. For future reference. Good idea, Maya agreed. What should we call this experiment? The Great Syrup Investigation of Saturday Morning, Emma suggested. I like it, Jake said. Very official. Maya watched her husband help their youngest daughter spell investigation, while their oldest daughter documented their findings with the seriousness of an actual researcher. This was her life now Saturday morning, chaos and pancakes gone cold, and children who felt safe enough to be silly. It was perfect in its imperfection. Later that afternoon, after grocery shopping and lunch, and the kind of lazy Saturday activities that made weekends feel like gifts, Maya found herself in the backyard garden with Jake. The children were inside, supposedly doing quiet time, but actually engaged in an elaborate game involving stuffed animals and what sounded like a complex system of monarchy. I got an email yesterday, Maya said, pulling weeds from around the tomato plants. From Colonel Martinez. Jake looked up from where he was staking bean plants. About what? A promotion. To Sergeant First Class. But it would mean another deployment. 15 months this time. Jake's hands stilled on the stakes. Where? Germany. Medical support for training operations. Much safer than Syria, but... Maya trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. But you don't want to go. I don't want to leave again. I don't want to miss another year and a half of Saturday morning syrup experiments and bedtime stories and Emma losing more teeth. Maya sat back on her heels. Is that terrible? Should I want the promotion? Jake was quiet for a moment, considering. What did you tell him? That I needed time to think about it. Time to talk to my family. And now you're talking to your family. Maya smiled. Part of it anyway. What do you think? I think, Jake said carefully, that this family will support whatever decision you make, but I also think you already know what you want to do. Maya looked toward the house, where she could see Sophia's face pressed against the kitchen window, probably making sure they weren't doing anything interesting without her. I want to stay, she said quietly. I want to be here for school plays and soccer games and homework meltdowns. I want to be here when they're sick, when they're scared, when they're happy. I want to be present for my life, instead of always preparing to leave it. So stay. It's not that simple. This is my career, Maya. Jake's voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. She did. You've given 18 years to the Army. You've served with honor, saved lives, made a difference. If you want to step back now, if you want to choose your family over your career, that doesn't make you weak or selfish, or anything other than a mother who knows what she values most. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. What if I regret it? What if you regret not doing it? That night, after baths and bedtime stories and the elaborate ritual of getting 3 children settled for sleep, Maya sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open to a blank email. Jake was beside her, grading papers from his graduate social work students, but she could feel his attention like a steady presence. How do I tell the Army that I choose my family? She asked. The same way you'd tell anyone. Honestly. Respectfully. With confidence in your decision, Maya stared at the blank email for a long moment, then began to type, "Colonel Martinez, thank you for considering me for promotion and the opportunity to serve in Germany. After careful consideration and discussion with my family, I have decided to respectfully decline this assignment." She paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "My time in the Army has been the greatest honor of my professional life. The opportunity to serve, to save lives, to work alongside the finest men and women our country has to offer, these experiences have shaped me in ways I will carry forever." Another pause. From upstairs came the sound of Lucas coughing, followed by Jake's immediate movement toward the stairs. Maya watched him go, marveling at the automatic way he responded to their children's needs. "However, my family circumstances have changed significantly since my last deployment. I am now married, and the mother of 3 children who need stability and consistency. While I remain committed to serving my country, I believe I can best do that by transitioning to reserve status and focusing on my role as a wife and mother." Jake returned, settling back into his chair with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd successfully tucked a coughing child back into sleep. "Everything okay?" Maya asked. "Just needed some water and an extra hug." "He's fine." Maya nodded and returned to her email. "I would be honored to discuss transition options that would allow me to maintain my connection to the Army while prioritizing my family responsibilities. Thank you for your understanding and for the privilege of serving under your command." She read the email twice, then looked at Jake. "What do you think?" Jake read over her shoulder, his hand resting gently on her back. "I think it's perfect. I think it's brave." "Brave?" "It takes courage to choose love over duty when duty has defined you for so long." Maya saved the email to drafts, not quite ready to send it yet. "Jake? Yeah? Are you sure? About all of this? About me giving up deployments? About us building this life together? Because once I send this email, there's no going back." Jake turned his chair to face her fully. "Maya, do you know what I was doing the day before I met you?" She shook her head. "I was sitting in Sophia's room at 2 in the morning, watching her sleep and wondering if I was enough, if one parent could possibly give her everything she needed, if I was failing her by not being able to replace what she'd lost." Maya's throat tightened. "And then you walked into our lives, you and Emma and Lucas, and suddenly Sophia had siblings and I had a partner, and our house was full of laughter and chaos, and the kind of love I'd forgotten was possible." Jake reached for her hands. "You didn't just give me your children to care for, Maya. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to believe that broken things could be made whole again." Maya felt tears slip down her cheeks. "You gave me the same thing." "Then there's your answer. We choose each other. We choose this life we've built together. We choose to stay." Maya opened her email and hit send before she could second-guess herself. 3 days later, Colonel Martinez called personally to congratulate her on her decision and to discuss her transition to reserve status. A week after that, she started a new job at the VA hospital, 20 minutes from home, helping other veterans navigate the complicated process of coming back to civilian life. On her first day, Jake packed her lunch with a note tucked inside. "Proud of you for choosing love. See you at dinner. The kids are making you a welcome home cake. Fair warning, Lucas was in charge of decorating." Maya smiled, tucked the note into her pocket, and walked into her new life with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. That evening, she came home to a chocolate cake, covered in enough frosting to feed a small army and decorated with what appeared to be an abstract representation of her family, 5 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow that took up half the cake. "It's beautiful," she declared, and meant it. "Lucas did the people," Emma explained. "I did the rainbow. Sophia did the flowers around the edge. And Daddy helped with the frosting," Sophia added. "But mostly we did it ourselves." Maya looked around the kitchen at the frosting fingerprints on the counter, at the dishes piled in the sink, at her 3 children beaming with pride over their culinary creation. She looked at Jake, who was watching her with the soft expression he wore when he was memorizing a moment. "You know what?" she said, pulling all of them into a group hug that smelled like chocolate and vanilla and home. I think this is the most beautiful cake I've ever seen." Later that night, after cake had been eaten and dishes washed and children tucked into beds, Maya and Jake sat on their back porch swing, listening to the sounds of their neighborhood settling into sleep. "Any regrets?" Jake asked, his arm around her shoulders. Maya thought about the question seriously. She thought about the promotions she wouldn't receive, the places she wouldn't see, the different version of herself she'd chosen not to become. Then she thought about the life she'd chosen instead: Saturday morning pancake negotiations and homework help, and the particular joy of being present for all the small moments that added up to a childhood. "None," she said, and realized she meant it completely. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in their garden and marveling at the quiet miracle of an ordinary life lived with extraordinary love. From inside the house came the sound of Lucas calling for water, followed by Emma's patient voice explaining that the water cup was right beside his bed. Sophia's door creaked open, and Maya could picture her checking on her younger siblings the way she did every night, appointed guardian of their small, perfect world. "We did good," Jake said quietly. "Yeah," Maya agreed, settling deeper into his embrace. "We did good." Above them, stars emerged in the summer sky, and Maya closed her eyes and made a wish not for anything different, but for more of exactly this. More ordinary evenings and extraordinary love, more chaos and comfort, more chances to choose each other, over and over again. The wish felt redundant, because she already had everything she'd ever dreamed of asking for. She had come home.